Alrighty.
Welcome back.
Sorry, I was vacuuming earlier and we thought a cat got away, but I found it.
Ah,
I was watching Hoarders. I should have been vacuuming, but I was watching Hoarders.
Alright, so thank you all for coming. So today we're going to talk about what Warcraft logs is, what people mean when they're talking about parsing, and how you can use the data that's surfaced to you through Warcraft logs to improve your performance in raid, whether that's damage or healing or tanking or whatever. Um, so basically, there is a site called Warcraft Logs, and in game, um, anytime you're in combat, there's what's called a combat log. Um, Basically, what that is a gigantic text file in which every single action that takes place in the fight is written out to a line in that combat log. And tools like Warcraft Logs go and read that file and then break it apart into a bunch of various statistics. And basically, you can kind of recreate everything that happened in the course of a fight by reading the combat log. Um, so real quick, the way to create a a log or to upload your own logs to Warcraft logs, you can go into the system network setting and then check advanced combat logging, and that will log everything that happens in the fight instead of just the really basic stuff that happens normally. And you need this advanced combat logging in order for your log to show up on Warcraft logs. Um, then, once you have turned that on, you go to the website and you download their log client. Either one will work. I like using this one just because it comes with some extra features and you can use it in game, whereas this one you use outside of the game. And that looks like this little guy up here. And you can create a log. I upload mostly to my personal logs or to the guild logs if we're doing guild stuff. You just type in whatever name you want, and that's it. We've created a live log already, which you can see this test log that I just created.
If we don't have that little thing on our mini map, how do we get it to show up?
Yeah, if you don't have that, then instead of doing it through here, outside of the game, you would launch the Warcraft logs little app here. And it looks just the exact same as the one that pops up there.
Ellie, I
Hmm?
used to have that pop up, but I don't know what I did to make it go away.
Were you using the companion or the standalone one? Like the Warcraft logs uploader or the Warcraft logs companion? Do you know?
Have to be the uploader because I've never used the companion. I
Okay.
don't think.
You may just need to reinstall it. I'm not sure how long ago it was, or if you just search in your start menu in Windows for Warcraft logs, it should pop up. But just reinstalling it should work fine. It will just upgrade any existing one that you have already.
Okay, so let's say I already have it.
Hmm.
How do you? Is there slash something slash?
Yeah, so you've got your log created. You've enabled advanced combat logging. And so I'm starting a live log here. Then you, let me change something. sorry. I had turned off the audio on Twitch. My bad.
So the big question is, Ellie, when are we going to get enough priests to give us all 6 PIs?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that Warcraft Logs has added recently, showing the different serious buffs that people are getting, because like somebody can go in there with terrible talents and a terrible spec and get 6 PIs and like just destroy somebody who's doing everything right. So that's a good thing to look for on this page. If I see somebody with 6 PIs, I'm not going to worry about their talents or whatever, you know. I want to see the people that are doing the most damage on their own without any external buffs, because that's repeatable, right? Like if I'm in a raid with boots, I'm not guaranteed to get PI. But if I'm doing this much
Won't
damage
get it.
regardless of getting PI, then I know I'm always good, right? Yeah, so obviously check out the class guides on like Icy Veins and Wowhead for like talents and Lego choices. But I use the class guides as like a starting point, and then I come here to Warcraft Logs to see what the best players in each spec are actually doing. Because those guides are always geared towards like 95% of players. And there's always like little optimizations or kind of like little sub builds that you can change, little tiny tweaks that you can do to push your DPS even farther. And that's what I like this top 100 for. Yeah, so and then we can kind of zoom down even further. So this is everybody in the world, right? You can do the same thing with healing, see what the top people, I don't know, see what Holy Pallies are doing on this fight, what talents they're taking, what their HPS is like, what legendaries they're using. Wow, PIing a Holy Pally on Shriekwing, okay. You can zoom it down to just North America. You want to see what people in Korea are doing. You want to see what specifically people using this Soulbind are doing, right? Because like if I'm playing a non-optimal Covenant, but I want to still do the best that I can, maybe I limit it to only people that are using the same Soulbinds as me and see how they're optimizing their gear choices and talents and all that. So that's useful for that. And then from there we can zoom down to say like just our realm. So let's see what's going on Suramar. Here you've got history of the realm first race in Mythic. Obviously group 2 is dominating. See how people are same sort of thing you'd see on the world, you know, leaderboards for guild progress, guild speed, damage, tanking, healing, item level. Same thing for M plus on our realm group or Torghast on our realm group. This is PTR stuff. You don't need to worry about that. And so say I want to see like what the best player that plays my class on our realm is doing. You know, maybe that's
You're
different.
on that page,
He's number 1 and number 2 on Torghast. That's hacked.
motherfucker.
I don't think anybody's logging Torghast on our realm except for me, so I don't know that counts. I am on this page, which is cute.
4 buffs.
Yeah. All jabroni carrying me right there.
Okay, before you get too far,
Mhm.
How did you get to this page again?
Yeah, so I, in the search bar at the top, searched for Suramar, Suramar US, and that took us to the realm group. It just says Suramar, but it's all 4 of our connected realms will show up here. So like there you see
Okay.
Darrowmere and Windrunner.
Yeah.
And then I clicked on View More for All Stars DPS to see what they were doing.
Okay, I gotcha.
So like when I am playing Outlaw, and I'm getting beat by Electro or Bella, I will go in and look and see what they're doing, and we'll get more into a little bit more on how to do that later. But for now, on the Realm page, it's a lot more of just the same types of statistics that you would get on the worldwide pages. You know, what trinkets and talents people are using on what fights, and how many buffs they're getting, how much damage they're doing, their item level, when these logs happened, how long the fight was. Just a ton of information that you can really drill down into and help you make more informed decisions about what talents and stuff, or what builds you want to be playing for yourself. So a lot of that information also can come down into like the guild level. So that we have a guild page, got a little profile, some stats about us, what we're recruiting, who's been raiding most recently, fun stuff like that. Calendar shows all the logs that we've uploaded. So this is every time we do a raid, we upload the logs for it so that people can go back and look at their performance and try to find ways to improve. Reports is also, it's just the calendar but in a list. So just reverse chronological, I guess, order of all the reports that get uploaded to our page. The characters in the guild, some settings, don't got to worry about that. Attendance, don't worry about it. In rankings, this is probably where a lot of people who've used Warcraft logs kind of passively have some experience. Like I know to join the progression team or to attend progression raids, we had a requirement for a while where you had to parse 50% average in heroic in order to step into mythic and stuff like that. This is the parsing that we're talking about in that case. So like in a parse, I guess what a parse is if you have 100 players that say play Assassination Rogue, and I parsed 63 on this fight, that means I beat 63 of those other people. So it's just a percentile. I'm in the 63rd percentile of Assassination Rogue players on this fight, right? So when we say we're like on heroic, we're asking for a 50th percentile. We're just asking that people hit like that 50% mark with their damage on that fight. And that's for damage. They have it for healing as well. All it does is just ranks you against other players in your spec and how you performed in comparison. So damage is just straight up DPS. Healing, same thing, HPS, healing per second. Boss damage is damage per second, but solely on the boss. Because like a lot of fights, not so much in this raid, but in previous raids, people will just AoE really heavily. Sun King's actually a really good example where if you keep, and I guess let me back up. Previously I was talking about how some of the rankings you'll find on the world page are a little skewed. They early on in this raid tier, there were groups that were getting together, keeping Sun King in phase 1 for a long time, and then having just one person kill all the ads by themselves. And so they would have astronomical AoE damage on that fight, and it would just completely throw off the curve for everybody else. So that's why they would split it up to like damage versus just boss damage. So like this is damage done solely
I'll
to
be
the
right back.
boss instead of done by padding with ads that don't matter, right?
Right.
Yeah. Also, this is probably the most important thing about rankings. I worry less about overall rankings because a lot of this is gear. Like Boots, for example, just destroys Sire every week, right? But he's only in the 97th percentile. But if we go to by bracket, which compares you against other players in your spec at a similar eye level, Boots is hitting 99 every time, which means he's playing his spec perfectly on that fight. I'm sure he can find some ways to improve, but very little room for improvement right there. It's only gear that's holding him back at that point, right? So if I see somebody, or if like you look at your character and like say I'm getting an 81 average on all of my stuff, but if I went to my bracket and my bracket parses are really low, that means that it's my gear that's carrying me and I'm not playing my class correctly. So that's a really good indication if you go Actually, let's go to that now. So you can also get down to your character page. You can either click in there or wherever. Um, sorry, from the ranking page, you can click on any character and it'll take you to that character's page. There's also this side menu here, which will take you to any of your characters once you're logged in. But yeah, so if I'm looking at my character page and I'm looking for areas in which I can improve, I'll switch it over to the by item level because, like I said before, a lot of this number is based on the gear that I have. I'm very geared on my rogue, so I'm doing a lot of damage just kind of passively. Every single ability I have hits harder. But if I look at by item level, that's comparing me to only other rogues that have similar item levels. And I see that I'm still doing pretty okay, so that means that I'm playing the class, passively well. If these numbers were really low, then that would indicate to me that like I have a misunderstanding of my class, or there's some way other players are playing my class specific to the fight, maybe that I should look into to increase that damage. Yeah, so the character page, pretty similar to the rankings page. It's just solely for your character. I see, the best I've done on each of these fights, the damage that I've done, how many kills, how fast they are, and then my average or my median parse on that. So while this is my best one, I generally average about the 63 percentile. And that is just helpful to know, like, maybe I had a lucky day, or maybe maybe I do okay on the fight most of the time. I wouldn't worry too much about that stuff. The main thing I would look for on this page is, what am I parsing overall? And then what am I parsing by item level? If there's a significant disparity between those two numbers, then I would do some more investigation to figure out why. Cool. So that is a good part of this stuff on the site. The rest of the main portion of the site is in the actual fight report. So here, if we look at our heroic run on Tuesday, this is what gets posted into the Discord channel every week. Is a link to this page here. And then so here you can see all of the different fights we had, every kill. If you expand some of these, you can see the wipes that we had. So we wiped one time on this fight, killed it the second time. Wiped 4 times on Sludge Fist, killed it the 5th time. And these bars here indicate how close we were to killing it. Orange is really close. This was probably like a 5% wipe, 1% wipe maybe. This one, you can see it went for 2 minutes and 26 seconds, so we aborted pretty early, probably due to chain deaths or something. There's also trash fights in there, don't care about that. And often after raids, people will come in here and then go straight to the rankings page because they want to see how they did. And this is just similar to the guild page, except it's specific only to the players that were in that raid with us. So here you can see it's sorted by average, and then there's tabs for damage, healing, boss damage, just as there is on the guild page. And this also has this by bracket tab, which will again compare you to other players in your spec with similar item levels. So like here we see for my hunter, I'm averaging 73% by item level. But overall, I'm averaging 34%. So that indicates to me that I'm playing the class pretty accurately. I just need to get some more gear, right? Or there might be other issues that we can investigate further, like why is my Dark Vein damage so low? By item level even. And, yeah, just more stuff to investigate there. But so that's the rankings page. Yeah. For each log that gets uploaded. Any quick questions on or yeah, do stop me if anything is unclear or you have questions as we're going.
I think at this point it's, at least for me, it's, I'm gonna have to play around with it to figure out some of the stuff you said in more detail.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much you can do in Warcraft logs. The one thing I would caution is like go into it with a specific question you're looking for an answer for, rather than trying to like figure out everything at once. Just because there's such an overwhelming amount of information and things you can do here, it's really easy to get overwhelmed in and get lost in all of the detail. But yeah, so that's the overall log. So it's got the rankings page, and then like you can break it into like different segments. You can look at just all the kills together, all the wipes together, all the encounters, or specific pulls. So like, let's start by looking at the heroic Shriekwing kill. And so that takes us to this page. It starts out, there's so many tabs, lots of information, cool graphs, cool bars, a lot of information here. So this first tab is just a summary. Here we're looking at per seconds of damage done, damage taken, healing done over time. This blue lighted area is when Bloodlust was used. And if you hover over it, you can see Kraus Core cast Bloodlust. Right? So it'll tell you who did that, how much damage was done in this 1 second across the raid, how much healing was done in this second, how much damage was taken in this second, and then like how these trends changed over the course of the fight. The raid composition, all the players that were in there, the average item level of our raid, brief look at like damage done by everyone, healing done, damage taken. So we can see like Wave of Blood is by far the most damaging ability on this fight. Sanguine Ichor, these are the blood pools on the ground. So this is how much damage was done just by people standing in blood throughout the course of the fight. And then who died when and to what, as well as a kind of breakdown of each character that was in there, their soulbinds, conduits, the gear they had, talents, a lot of the same stuff you get on the rankings page, but just again specific to the people that were in for this raid. I don't spend a whole lot of time on the summary page. I don't find it particularly helpful, aside from like seeing who was in the raid and then the average item level. Where I spend most of my time is in the damage done, damage take. Well, from a DPS perspective, I spend most of my time in the damage done tab. So here I can see who did how much damage and when. When I hover over Kraus, I can see a breakdown of his top 5 most damaging abilities. So clearly Lava Burst is up there, Frost Shock not up there so much. If I mouse over the amount, I can see how much damage of that was from Kraus, how much of that was from his elemental, a little bit from a frothing pustule. I don't know what that is, probably a trinket. His item level, how he performed compared to other shamans with his item level, his active percentage. This is the amount of time he spent actively casting spells throughout the course of the fight, and then his damage by the end of the fight. And that breakdown is there for everybody. I can see what Walls' most damaging ability was, what Dove was doing, and same for me. Can break everybody down that way. Similarly, I can change the source to look at just one specific player. So let's say I want to see just what I was doing throughout the course of the fight. So this is all the damage that I did in that fight, broken down into each ability, what percentage of my overall damage that ability did, how much damage value that had. So I did 259,000 damage solely from aimed shot. What's this drop down? I don't know what that drop down's for. How many times I cast it, how much damage the average cast did, how many times that spell hit, and how much damage the average hit did, along with my crit percentage, uptime if there's a debuff like a dot. So for example, Serpent Sting is a dot and it had a 62% uptime, along with how much DPS that specific ability contributed to my overall damage. And then at the bottom there's the sum of those values. So I did 2949 damage or DPS on that fight, almost 900k damage total. There's also actually, sorry, before we go there, I can switch from friendlies to enemies, so I can actually see what Shriekwing's DPS looked like against us as a raid. So he was doing almost 20,000 damage per second to us.
I inspired him.
And yeah, most of that, as we saw in the damage taken summary, most of that was from the Wave of Blood. Some of it was from the melee and all of these other things. I can also drill down into just specific abilities. So say I want to see how many people got hit by the swipe. We'll do damage done. There we go. Okay, so I can see everybody who got hit by a swipe throughout the entire fight, and how many times they got hit by it versus how many times the ability was used. So Shriekwing did 4 swipes, and these people got hit those many times and took that much damage per hit. So we can remove Shriekwing from there, go back to friendlies, and look at damage taken. Here you can see how much damage everyone took. Obviously the tanks are going to be really high up there. If you're not a tank, you don't want to be up here. If you are a tank, you should obviously still try to mitigate as much as you can. But what's useful on this page for me as a DPS player is if I see that I'm third, which thankfully I'm not, I know that I should be trying to position better such that I'm taking less damage, or making sure that I'm using some damage mitigation in line with more damaging abilities, doing my best to help out the healers and stay alive. So that's what's helpful with damage taken. And again, if you hover over stuff, you can see where that damage was coming from. So for me, playing on my hunter, Wave of Blood, obviously the big one. Sanguine Ichor, I could dodge the puddles a little better. Ear-splitting Shriek, I should definitely be dodging that. I shouldn't take any damage from that. And Descent, that means I got hit by somebody's gargoyle or a gargoyle of my own. So definitely stuff that I can work on as far as taking less damage and staying alive on this fight. Yeah, so same healing, pretty similar to the damage done. You can see the breakdown of the different amounts of healing that Noxie had, how many times he cast Wild Growth, so how many times he cast Rejuvenation, percentage of overall healing that those 2 spells did for him, and healing per second, all of this good information. Pretty much the same as damage, it's just the inverse, I guess. There's threat. As a DPS player,
I'm back.
Hey, welcome back. As a DPS player, I don't worry too much about threat, except to make sure that I don't have it. So I generally ignore this tab. Here it looks like walls caught a little bit of threat, which is interesting. So let's look at that. Yeah, so 4 seconds into the fight, walls took a melee. Looks like, I guess he pulled off a cover on the pull, probably. And then Cover quickly got it back, so hopefully Walls didn't die from that, but we will find out.
I'm fairly certain I did, but go ahead.
Buffs is really important for a lot of reasons. Obviously, you can see major cooldowns like Tranquility or Mastery. A lot of healing cooldowns, raid cooldowns go here. Rallying Cry, Bloodlust, those things. I generally don't worry about those as damage. I do worry about major individual cooldowns. So I guess I mean this might be pretty basic, but like it's helpful to think about where damage comes from. Like going back to the damage done breakdown. As a hunter, my number 1 ability is Aim Shot. My number 2 is Arcane Shot. Right? These are 2 abilities that deals some amount of damage, right? So that means the more I get to use those abilities, the more damage I will do over the course of the fight. And those abilities are limited by, some resource, obviously mana, focus, energy, cooldown times, what have you. But the more often I use those abilities, the more damage I do. And so that's why for damage cooldowns, you try to use those as early as possible in a fight. That way you can use them more frequently. And we want those damaging abilities to hit as hard as possible. And to do that, we like to line up our cooldowns with other damage increases. Haste bonuses, combat potions, trinkets, aligning with Bloodlust as best as we can, or like on Sludge Fist, for example, where he takes extra damage, making sure that we line up our cooldowns with the times that Sludge Fist is taking more damage. That's where this buffs tab can come into really handy, right? So
What does the teach me thing mean?
Teach me thing. Oh, on the right, that is a thing that the website has to allow you to offer some input into how it should track or value these different things. It's not something I would worry about. It's if you're interested in contributing to Warcraft logs, you can click on that and provide some input back to the site to help inform how it values the different abilities and stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so I go here to the buffs tab to check for buff uptime. So for example, I've got damage buffs here. As marksman, there is a buff called steady focus that you try to keep up above 99% uptime. Clearly, we're not doing that, Gamer and I. Shriekwing is going to be a weird example because he's immune to damage for a lot of the fight, so you can't actually do that, which you'll see here by this large gap where he's in phase 2 and not targetable, and then again here at the end. But if we just look at my uptime, we can see I'm able to keep my buff active for the first 2 minutes of the fight, and then on the second half, I let it drop slightly at these 3 spots here. So right away, that's something that tells me, okay, I did pretty good about keeping my haste buff active, but it's still something that I should keep an eye out for, right? And then the debuffs tab, pretty similar to the buffs tab. This one is mainly where you're going to want to look to see if you're keeping your dots up on the boss. I believe. Oh wait. So this is debuffs of friendlies. So these are the debuffs that are on us as the raid. But if I go to debuffs enemies, that's where I'll see my dots. So say I'm playing a Shadow Priest. Same thing as the buff I wanted to keep up on my Hunter. I want to make sure I've got my Shadow Word Pain uptime as close to 100% as possible. Here you can see whoever had this dot on the boss, let it drop for a second there, right? So that's an easy fix. Work on this uptime for your damage.
What's the big gap in the middle?
The big gap in the middle is phase 2, where he's immune and you can't deal damage to him.
Oh, okay.
Let's see, deaths tab. Looks like nobody died, I guess. That's good. Is that right? It doesn't feel right. Oh. There's another thing. The site does use quite a bit of memory, so occasionally you'll get the data kind of disappear, and you might just need to refresh, or refresh even harder. Did nobody die on this fight? There's healing done for sure. Let me close it and try to reopen it.
Not on heroic last week.
Oh, the healing should be there. Okay, we can revisit that later. looks like... Oh, I am so silly. I have it set to all enemies, and Shriekwing did no healing and did not die during the course of the fight. So we switch back to friendlies, and we look at deaths, and there's all of our deaths. Yeah, so if I died during the fight, which I did, I can look through and I can see my health over the course of the fight, as well as a log of everything leading up to my death. And it looks like I got hit by Ear-Splitting Shriek, and it hit me for around 14,000 damage, which killed me. So going forward, I know not to get hit by Ear-Splitting Shriek and LOS better. Interrupts shows you if anybody interrupted on the boss. Dispel, same thing. Resources is kind of interesting. For the hit points, you can see, like, obviously, just like on the deaths log for me, I can see the course, how your hit points look over the course of the fight. So, like, here's Dawn's health throughout the fight. Here's Waffles. That's not super helpful for the most part, unless you're trying to look for like, say I've got a raid cooldown that I can use, like say I'm playing a warrior. I want to look at the hit points for the whole raid throughout a fight and figure out when the best time to use that ability would be. That's something I could use hit points for. What I would mainly use it for as a damage player is I'm looking for resources. So playing my hunter, I want to look at my focus throughout the fight and figure out if there's times where I'm capping on my focus. Because as a damage player, going back to the bit about using abilities as frequently as possible, if I'm constantly generating focus and I'm using that focus on aim shots or arcane shots, I should never cap out on focus, because you constantly generate those resources at the same rate. So if I'm ever at 100% focus, like I am here, I'm still generating focus, but it's being wasted. I'm not going to be able to use that focus that's being generated during this time because I'm capped. Sorry. So coming in here, I can see a lot of time I've spent, almost the full last 30 seconds of the fight capped on focus. I don't recall why that is, but that's a definite red flag there, right? I should be spending that focus on damaging abilities so that I can do more damage. I should never be capped on resources. Same thing goes for, if you're playing a rogue, you can look at energy.
That second 30 seconds is when he went into phase 2 again. Remember, he was almost dead. And then when he came out, during that time.
That's right. Thank you. That would make a lot of sense. So yeah, going back here. Yeah, so he went back into phase 2 right here. Okay. Great. So I'm not quite as bad as I thought, but I still have some areas of improvement to make here. Like, I shouldn't be capping on focus there. Like, all throughout this section, I should never hit 100%, because then I'm wasting focus that I'm generating. Also, just as a quick aside, you can zoom in to little bits. Like, say I want to look at just my focus spent during Bloodlust. You can just highlight a section of the map, and it will zoom in to that timestamp. And then you can reset the zoom there. So yeah, same thing for energy, runic power, whatever your resource is that you use. So let's see how Kraus is doing with his Maelstrom. Awesome, it looks like. So he caps once in the start of the fight, and then once again just before that first phase 2. And like the rest of the fight, he didn't waste any of his Maelstrom generation. And you can actually see here in the table, he gained almost 1,500, and he only wasted 25. So that's huge. That's a really, really efficient use of his resources there. Whereas if we go back to me, I wasted 121 focus over the course of that fight. That's, who knows how much a aim shot costs. Certainly not me. but I imagine that that's at least another aim shot that I could have done. So that's how you can use the resources tab. And then the last tab here in the analyze section are casts. This is a really cool section. This is also where I spend a lot of my time as a damage player. I can look and see how many casts per minute each player is playing, or each player is doing, as well as their uptime, item level, their top damaging abilities, same thing as before. What casts per minute are exactly that. How many spells did you cast in 1 minute? Or how many abilities did you use in 1 minute? So it's not always that higher is better necessarily. Shadow Priests have a lot of instant casts. A lot of melee players will be really high here. So it's kind of hard to compare across specs, but you can compare from your spec to another player in your spec pretty easily, right? So like Gamer and Visor, both playing marksman. Aim shot is a 2-second cast. We want to do a lot of aim shots, so we're going to have a large portion of our minute spent using 2-second casts. So we're going to have relatively low cast per minute as compared to a Shadow Priest. But we still want to have as many casts as we can in a minute. So we're pretty close here between the two of us. So I imagine that that's somewhere close to where we want to be. But we can look. You also have to be careful comparing against other players, especially in your raid, because you might be different covenants. You might have different soulbinds, different abilities, like any number of things that could be affecting something like that. So while it's helpful and fun to compare to other players in your raid group, it's generally not like the best way to find optimizations for you, because all of those subtle differences really do add up. But there's a way that we'll go into a little bit later about how to find a good comparison target, and we are almost to that point. But yeah, so cast per minute, how many spells you cast in a minute. Active time is how much time in the fight you spent casting spells. This is one that you do want to compare again across the raid, and like is mostly spec agnostic. You want active time to be as close to 100% as possible. Shriekwing is a outlier there, because he has that phase 2 where he's immune and you just literally can't cast spells at him if you're a damage player. Healers are always going to shine here for active time because they can heal during phase 2. But for all of the damage players and all of the tanks, for example, should be as close to each other and as close to 100% as possible. For this fight, everybody should be shooting for always casting spells. If you're not, like if the boss is targetable and you're not casting spells, you are losing DPS. That is really not much more to it. Active time, you want as close to 100% as possible. And that's casts. So that is all of the different sections in the Analyze tabs, or Analyze view, I guess. But there are 4 different ways with which you could look at this data. So like looking at active percentage and cast per minute is cool and helpful, and it lets me know if I'm doing enough things in a fight. But what's really helpful for improving is looking at stuff like the timelines and the events and these queries. So if we switch to this timelines view, we can see exactly what spells everyone is casting at exactly what moment in the fight, right? So I can see, like playing my hunter, I opened before the fight casting a steady shot, and then I immediately cast another steady shot before using my wild spirits and true shot aura. Right, so you can go through the entire fight and at any given moment see what anybody's doing. And this also comes really helpful later on when you're comparing against another person to find ways with which you can improve, which again we'll go to in a minute. The events tab, so similar, is just a chronological order of all of the different combat events. Very first thing that happens in the fight, Walls cast Judgment on Shriekwing. Very next thing, it cast Frost Nova which is
I
interesting.
wonder how he got threat to start.
I have no idea.
Yeah. But yeah, and then so you can go through again, seeing exactly who cast what when. This is generally unhelpful as a damage player. I don't care about that so much. I'm more focused on myself rather than the whole raid, right? So I'll probably stay out of the events tab if I'm looking for ways to improve. And then the queries tab. This is a generally much more advanced way to look at all of the data in your stuff in the log. Say you can like limit it to myself, and I want to see like all of my aim shots, like how many casts and the damage. Say I also want to look at resources. Like there's a lot of different custom views and stuff you can create in here that's out of scope of this particular talk, but really, really, really powerful. You can, if you're a coder, you can come in and like write some expressions to query all of this data. You can also, of course, export all of this into like Excel files, and if you're more comfortable there, and a lot of good tools that they've made available for you if you need that sort of, or are you interested in like that sort of analysis. For the most part, I would avoid it for now until you're really comfortable with the site. Tables view should handle most cases. Timelines view should handle the rest for most people in most situations. Okay, and then the last bit, there are these sections up here. So we went over rankings earlier. That's the same thing where you see everybody's rankings on the fight, their eye level and all that. What we've just been going over for the last 20 minutes or so is the analysis view, all of the different ways to analyze the fight. There's also this mechanics tab, which has a lot of helpful information and some irrelevant information. But like, so here you can see who's using combat potions in the fight, who's using health stones and health pots. Like on progression, I would expect everyone to have 2 here. You should be using a health stone and a health pot on every progression fight. For something like Heroic Shriekwing, which we've been killing as long as it's been alive, I wouldn't expect very many health stones here at all. Slow deaths is interesting because you can see who died over a longer period of time. Slow deaths are generally avoidable deaths, and if you have a lot of them, that generally means healing was low or mechanics were very bad. In this case, all of these killing blows being ear-splitting shriek is indicating to me that mechanics were very bad on this pull. Eye level requirements is cool. It's just if you're a statistics nerd or whatever, you can see what our average item level was. The minimum item level ever to beat this boss was 140, which is like very surprising. And then for our raid size, which I think we had like 25 people or something, that's the lowest average item level to ever kill Heroic Shriekwing. As a damage player, I wouldn't worry about that. I would be worried if I'm not showing up as using a combat pot, because I know my raid leader expects me to use combat potions on every pull. Same thing for health stones and health pots. But more important than any of those things are avoidable damage, right? As a DPS player, if I'm taking a lot of avoidable damage, I'm going to die, and I'm not going to do a lot of damage. So the very first thing every damage player should do when they're looking to improve their DPS is make sure they live till the end of the fight, which means executing mechanics correctly and avoiding anything that you possibly could avoid. So if I'm Tom and I come in here and I see I'm number 1 on the avoidable damage list, I got hit by 10 things that I could have avoided. That's unfortunate. I click on him. I don't need that. And so I know avoidable is ear-splitting shriek, and I got hit by 10 casts of it. So that means next week when I go in, I can say, well, I need to pay special attention to when ear-splitting shriek is going out, making sure that I'm not getting hit by it. And if you need help figuring out like good strategies for that sort of thing, ways to get notified about when mechanics that you're struggling with are coming up, let me know outside of this talk, and then we can set up like some alerts. We can get some weak auras that can help notify you. But like as a DPS player, I want to avoid all avoidable damage, as the name implies. So it's avoidable damage. Sorry, all sources. So ear splitting shriek. Yeah, so here on the mechanics tab, which is where we are, it'll break down each of these avoidable damage into the different types and kind of give you some hints as to what those abilities are and how to deal with them. Ear splitting shriek, line of sight it. These people did not line of sight the shriek. These people stood in the blood pools X number of times. You know, I'm playing Visor. I stood in the pool 16 times. That number should be 0. Yeah, so that's the mechanics tab. Some fight-specific help, some general help, potions, health stones, slow deaths, that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's the mechanics tab. And finally, we have the compare tab. This is probably the best part for improving your damage in all of Warcraft logs, aside from looking at damage taken. Actually, real quick, before we get into that, I know I keep teasing you with the comparisons, but in the vein of avoidable damage, one place is for that mechanics tab, but also if I'm playing Visor, I'm concerned about me and the damage that I took. I can just drill down to myself, damage taken, and then look, and then I know what these mechanics are. So I know I shouldn't be getting hit by Descent. I shouldn't be getting hit by Ear Splitting Shriek. I shouldn't be standing in blood pools. I can see that, you know, clear as day here. This is, let's see, what is, so without Wave of Blood. Yeah, all of this is avoidable damage, right? Echoing Sonar, those are the discs. Yeah. So here are all the times which I failed a mechanic on this pool. That looks like a lot to me, so I know that next week I should work extra hard to not have any of this damage being taken. Okay, that was the last thing on that. Any questions about any of that before we go on to comparisons? I know this is a ton of information, so please stop me if it ever gets overwhelming or confusing. Yeah, so the comparison tab, you can either compare reports directly. So say I have found some fight here. Let's see, Shriekwing, Mythic. I don't know, we're looking at Marksman Hunters right now. So say I can look at the #1 Marksman Hunter in the world on this fight. I can compare our heroic log to this log by comparing with the URL, and it tells you where to find the string you need. So like if the URL looks like that, you can grab that ID and put it in this box. So we can do that like so. Compare with that URL. And now we've got 2 logs in one here. This is a kind of a confusing way to look at things. I would recommend not looking at 2 whole logs like this, just because it's way too much information. What I would do is either compare against 2 players in this report. So say you're raiding with someone who shares a spec with you. So like in this case, we've got both Gamer and Visor who are both playing Marksman. We can compare them like so. And then it will just give us a left side and a right side. So I can quickly look and see what Gamer's talents are for this fight, what Visor's talents are for this fight, what Soulbinds and Conduits he's running, which ones I'm running. Right away I see he's not renown capped, so I'm getting a lot more benefit from my Covenant than he is, which is going to make comparison of all of our abilities a little different. And so like remember how earlier I was talking about comparing against players in your raid can be kind of fraught because of all of these tiny inconsistencies that add up and make them not really comparable. This is a good example of that. I'm going to have more damage than him just because I've maxed out my covenant and he hasn't. Similarly, we can look at what gear we're running, what enchants, what legendaries, and then a breakdown of our damage. And breakdown of damage taken. So same thing as you would get on the summary page for everybody, just limited to these two players. And then I can still look at all of these other things we went through, narrowed down to just these two players so I can compare them. I'm going to not compare to Gamer because he doesn't have his covenant capped and our item level is pretty different, so it's not a good comparison. And so let's go back to the compare tab. And let's find somebody who is a good comparison. This is the best way to find areas of improvement. So, and actually, I think this is the final adieu. Since I died on this fight, this is not a good fight for me to compare against another player, because the first thing I should do to improve my damage on this fight is not die. So let's look at a fight that I did not die on. Let's see, did I die on Sludgefest? Give it a second. There it goes. I did not die on Sludgefist, so this is a good candidate for comparison. And so we will pick me. We want to find fights that are close to the same fight length, because if I'm comparing against somebody who killed the fight in 1 minute and it took me 6 minutes to kill it, it's like the cooldown timings are going to be weird, the cooldown count's going to be weird. Just like everything changes on the fight depending on the fight length. So limiting it to fights that are close to the same length is good. Same thing for raid size. If they're playing with 10 players and I'm playing with 30, all of the values are going to be skewed. Item level, really important. I want to compare against players that have similar gear to me, because then I know that whatever, like say I find somebody who's doing a lot more damage than me with the same level of gear, I know that that means that I can be doing a lot more damage, and I can look at what they're doing and compare it to what I'm doing and find ways to improve. And then time range, we just want to look at more recent reports, because I don't care what people were doing in February. I want to know what people are doing in whatever month this is. May? Is it May? It's a pandemic. I don't remember time anymore.
Indeed.
Yeah, and then I just care about damage for my hunter, because I'm a DPS player. That's all that matters. So we hit the search button and we get all of these results back. Let's see, here's me. 100% match because it's me. This match percentage is based on like talents and trinkets. It'll try to find you a good match for players that share your talents, players that share your trinkets, similar covenants, similar soul binds, things like that. I don't worry too much about this match percentage personally, because if I can gain 1,000 DPS by switching covenants and soul binds or something, I'm going to do that. That's an easy swap for me. But again, that's because I'm a DPS player and all I care about is damage. So I'm going to look at who did the best. So Lycanod from the Cake Man Guild on Silver Moon EU. He's got 208 item level. I am down here at 207 item level, and he did 1,100 more damage than I did just a few days after I did. Fights pretty close to the same duration. And just a quick look at the talents. We have the same talents, both running the Stone Legion trinket with a different off trinket. So he's got a stat haste trinket, and then I've got the worst possible caster trinket. So we can click on Lycanod, and then we're back here in this comparison view, and we can see what we both did when. one more time, quick on the summary. Let's look at his coal binds and conduits. His soul binds and conduits, both running burrs, which is good. Both running spirit attunement. These are the kind of cookie cutter default marksman best in slot options for that. None of the other stuff really matters for marksman. Both running the same legendary, so feels like I'm on the right track here. So that means that we're both geared similarly. We both have similar talents, soul binds and conduits, which means it's within my power to improve my DPS by 1100 damage per second on this fight. This is somebody who was able to do that while being equipped similarly to me. So what we want to do is look at how he's using his abilities and when, and how they differ from what I'm doing, and then think about if that makes sense for me to do, like to make a change, or if I'm fine playing it how I'm playing it right now. So here we are in the damage done. Quick breakdown of all of the abilities that we're using. Right off the bat, I see that he's getting 5 more aimed shots than I am over the course of the fight. That might not contribute to well, it might contribute a lot. His average cast is 1.7 more than me, but his overall aimed shot damage is like 130,000 more than me. That's curious. So I wonder if that means that he's using his aim shots at more opportune times or something, or like he's getting
Can
more
you see
value
their
from him.
stats?
Also, the crit chance would be a big difference.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, he's got almost double the crit percentage that I do. Yeah, we can see their stats here on the summary page. So right here at the top, we see I've got 210 crit, whereas he's out here with almost 800 crit.
Holy.
So who knows how he managed that? Let's do a quick look through the stats he has on his gear. So he's running mostly haste first gear. There's 1 crit. There's 2. Got the crit.
Isn't that you on that side, or is that him?
Oh shit, you're right. That's me. Thank you. Okay, so there's a little bit. Yeah, so he's stacking crit for sure, which is interesting. Yeah, so crit chance is a good candidate here for the difference. Well, I'd say it's pretty safe to say that that's since he only got 5 more casts than I did, but 130,000 more damage out of his aim shots, like must just be critting up a storm. Whereas I've just got little baby aim shots going on. So that's something to consider. Maybe I need to start looking for more crit gear. Maybe not. Let's continue on and look for more rotation and optimizations there. Moving on to arcane shot. He's got maybe 15 more than I do, 100,000, 120,000 more damage. Crit percentage is a little bit closer here. Not too worried about that, but something to keep an eye on. His next is Serpent Sting for 130, whereas mine is Auto Shot, which is interesting. His Auto Shot is 5 more down, and then I've got Steady Shot and then Serpent Sting. So his steady shot is down here. So I cast 82 steady shots over the course of the fight, whereas he only cast 62. So that is indicating to me that I'm casting a lot of steady shots when I should be casting aim shots. Maybe I'm focus capping instead of dumping focus on arcane shots. Maybe I'm prioritizing maintaining my haste buff when I should be prioritizing not capping on aim shots. So these are all a lot of theories that we can explore looking more into it. But that seems like a good areas for improvement if they prove to be true. So let's start by looking at the resources and see if I am focus capping. Youch. So I spent most of the fight focus capping.
Ha.
Yeah, so here we see I've wasted almost 400 focus over the course of the fight, whereas he wasted only 60 focus over the course of the fight. So that's a pretty clear thing that I need to work on. Never be focus capped. Always be dumping your focus as best as you can, right? And then, but let's look at buffs. Because, as I said, I'm learning marksman right now. I'm mainly focusing on trying to maintain this steady focus buff, which I am doing more than he is, actually, but at the expense of focus capping a lot. You know, I'm focus capping even though I don't need to, solely for the benefit of keeping this buff active. And even then, I'm still dropping it periodically. Whereas Lycanod here is just dropping it and appears to be fine with it. In fact, it looks like, so I know this is Sludge Fist, so I know about 1 minute into the fight he hits a pillar. So this looks like every time Sludge Fist hits a pillar, Lycanod just ignores Steady Shot and just focuses on dumping damage into the boss, which is not a bad strategy. Because again, we want to maximize the damage that our abilities do by stacking all of these different damage bonuses. So the boss taking more damage from the pillar, I imagine he's using all of his cooldowns on those points, as he should be. And to ensure that he's doing more damage, he's ignoring maintaining steady focus during those times. So that's something that I can look into doing and trying out for myself and seeing if I get some benefit from that. And if I find that it's better, then maybe that's how I play the fight from now on. Or if it doesn't work for me, maybe I look for other areas that I can improve. But the most obvious thing for me right now is just the focus capping. I'm prioritizing maintaining this buff, even though I'm not dumping my focus enough. So that's a huge one for me to work on. So let's see, let's go back to damage done. So that would also explain why my auto shot is so much higher. I'm getting 30 more auto shots than he is over the course of the fight because my haste is staying higher because I'm maintaining this haste buff. Let's see, Wild Spirits we both got 3 casts out of, so that's good. Kill shot 6 and 7, pretty close. Let's look at how we're using True Shot and Wild Spirits. So because this person is doing so much more damage than me, I'm really interested into seeing how and when he's using his cooldowns. Because again, with these major cooldowns, you want to use them as frequently as possible, but you also want to get the most the most bang for your buck that you can out of them. So if he's using them in a place that I'm not, maybe he has a better spot for him than I do. Right, so let's take a look at that. Here we can see major individual cooldowns. Both got 3 casts out of them. But looking at, that's interesting. So I'm on the left here. Let's throw this up there. So that's my Wild Spirits. And this is his, no, that's also my Wild Spirits. Well, we'll just kind of zoom in here and see if we can see that. So I'm getting 3 casts of Wild Spirits, but only 11% uptime. And he's getting 3 casts, but 13% uptime. So his final Wild Spirits and final True Shot aura, he's getting a lot more time out of. Whether that's using the first one earlier in the fight than I am, so that he's got more uptime at the end of the fight, or maybe I just cast this one late. He's definitely getting more value out of those than I am. So let's take a look at the casts tab, and let's see when we're casting Wild Spirits. Interesting. Oh, I need both of us, that's why. Okay, yeah, so there we go. So we both cast the very first Wild Spirits at the same time. He was like half a half a second before I was on the first one, almost at the exact same time on the second one. But the third one, he cast 522 a full 15 seconds before I cast mine, which means I had mine off cooldown. Since we used it at the same time, they share the same cooldown. Mine was off cooldown this whole section of time here, and I waited until here to use it. Had I cast it at the same time he did, I could have got the full value out of it. So that's something to keep in mind for me next time I pull this boss, is towards the end of the fight, right after the fourth pillar, or third pillar. Let's see, damage taken, destructive impact. So this is the first pillar charge, second pillar charge, third, fourth. So after the fourth pillar charge, it'll come up towards like the very back half of the fight. That's something for me to keep an eye on, is watch my wild spirits and cooldowns timers to make sure that I'm using those abilities as soon as they're available. Same thing is going to be true, I'm sure, for True Shot, because you use those two abilities in tandem. Yeah, and so I see here he's casting True Shot before he does Wild Spirits, whereas so it's True Shot, whereas I cast Wild Spirits and then True Shot. I'm not sure which is better here, and I'm not sure that we can tell which is better yet, but that's something to look into. But yeah, so same thing for True Shot. I'm holding it too long for the third one. I need to be using it 10 seconds earlier. So now let's take some notes. If I can take some notes. Well, so we'll say I'm taking these two notes. I need to use my cooldowns earlier towards the end of the Sludge Fist fight, and I need to stop worrying about maintaining my steady shot buff at the expense of focus capping. Those are two like huge damage increases that I can gain just by looking at these two logs here. Let's see. What else were we going to look at? The other thing I would look at, so we've explained why our top 5 damaging abilities are different. It's because I'm maintaining my buff and he's dumping his focus more, as well as his additional crit percentage on aim shot. And then also we've looked at cooldown usage and found some places where I can improve there. The other thing we want to look at is the opener of the fight. Generally, most of the class guides will have a sample opener. You might see top players doing different openers. For example, when I was playing Outlaw, all of the class guides are like, you do one ambush, you turn on Slice and Dice, and then you do your rotation as normal or whatever. And then I'm out here raiding with Electro, who would open 5k DPS higher than me, and I couldn't figure out why. I went through and looked at his logs, found he's not casting Slice and Dice on the opener. He's waiting to get given Slice and Dice by his Roll the Bones buff. And so he's saving a full global that way. And you wouldn't think that a single global could make that much of a difference, but a single global several times throughout the fight does make a big difference. So dropping Slice and Dice out of my opener, I've found that I'm able to keep up with him on opening the fight. So similarly, let's look at Lycanod's opener here. Let's see what we're doing differently. And we'll define the opener here as everything before the first destructive impact. So let's limit it to here, so we can look at the first 51 seconds of the fight. And then we'll go over to, well, let's just look at damage done to see how much damage each of us has done over the opener. So right away, this is really interesting. In the first 50 seconds, he's doing 1100 more damage than me, or 1100 more DPS, which is consistent throughout the rest of the fight. 7 casts of aim shot from him, only 5 from me. 12 casts of aim shot from me, only 10 from him. 13 steady shots from him, 11 from me. And again, my auto shot is higher, whereas his Serpent Sting is higher with the legendary that we have. The legendary applies Serpent Sting when you cast aim shot, so that makes sense that he has a higher Serpent Sting than I do because he cast more aim shots than I did. So interesting stuff, but let's look at the casts exactly. And let's look at the timeline here. So here we can see what we each cast at every given moment for this first 50 seconds. So we can see that I opened before the pull. So before 0, I had cast a steady shot, so one of the steady shots landed at 0, and then I cast another steady shot right after. Whereas Lycanod pre-cast aim shot, so that an aim shot landed on the boss right on the opener, followed by an instant arcane shot, and then he started working on maintaining his buff. So that's certainly interesting. That would make sense. So there's one of the aim shots that he got that I didn't right off the bat, and then the next one is gonna be, I guess, towards the end. No, before the end. So he canceled an aim shot there to hold it for the pillar charge. That makes sense. And I guess, it was probably just a proc for him, but opening with aim shot versus trying to maintain that buff is an interesting change that I can try out and see if that benefits my opener. Because again, I was trying to maintain that buff, whereas he is trying to use as many aim shots as possible. And playing a marksman hunter, you should obviously be trying to use as many aim shots as possible. So that seems like a safe bet for me to make. Yeah, so a third thing that I can try out there next time I do this fight is changing up that opener. And then the last thing I would want to look at is what he's doing when he has all of his cooldowns rolling. So while we were looking before the pillar slam, now I want to look at what happens, what he's doing while he has Wild Spirits down versus what I'm doing when I have Wild Spirits down. There it is. Okay, so here's his Wild Spirits time. There's my Wild Spirits time. They overlap pretty nicely, so we can just look here. And this applies, of course, to any spec. If I'm playing an Assassination Rogue, I want to look at what other Assassination Rogues are doing when they have Vendetta up. Whatever your major class cooldown is, you can do the same thing. So we drill down to this Wild Spirits window here. And so we'll just look at just his time to start. Actually, let's look at just my time to start, so we can have a baseline. Is there... Okay, so here we've got my Wild Spirits window. And let's look at what casts I have. So during these 18 seconds, we'll go to the tables. We're not worried about what is in his table because his Wild Spirits window is a little different from mine. His started earlier and ended earlier. So we'll just look at mine for now. Got 5 name shots, 4 arcane shots, 2 rapid fires, 2 steady shots, and I had my True Shot aura running the whole time. With Wild Spirits and True Shot, it's pretty similar to the rest of the marksman rotation. You want to just get as many aim shots as possible while not focus capping, and then as you can dump arcane shot. I was prioritizing also maintaining that buff during True Shot, and we'll see if that is a good idea or not. But so here's a distribution of the casts that I did. Let's look at the damage that I did. So I did 14,000 damage during my Wild Spirits window. 14,000 DPS, sorry. 252,000 damage in that window. Let's reset the zoom. Look at buffs. Wild Spirits. and we'll look at his window. All right, so here we have his time. We'll look at what he cast during that time. 5 aim shots, 6 arcane shots, 2 steady shots, 1 rapid fire. So pretty similar. So that indicates to me that I have a decent idea of what to do when I'm using my cooldowns, since he did pretty similar stuff there. But let's look at the damage. I did 252, I think it was. He did 287. Part of that can be attributed to the crit chance for his aim shots. So I think it's safe to say that I'm doing my cooldowns pretty correctly. So that means looking at the fight holistically, I really just have those 3 things that I can work on. Making sure I get the most value out of my Wild Spears and True Shot Aura at the end of the fight. Maybe mixing up my opening rotation and never focus capping. Those seem to be the main 3 things that I did suboptimally, where Lycanod here excelled. But yeah, so that's pretty boring stuff, but this is kind of the type of stuff you would want to do if you're interested in mythic rating at a higher level. You want to go through every single fight, look at what other players are doing. That's where something like the player tab or your character tab can be helpful. Like go through and see, again, by item level, what fights you're doing well on comparatively, and what fights you have room for improvement on. This one, I know I just died mad early, and I only pulled it once, but so like Sludge Fist, for example, I'm doing pretty well for my item level, but there's even there we saw so much room for improvement. So you would want to go through each individual fight, find a good comparison target, look through when they're using their abilities, look through how you're managing their buffs, how you're using your cooldowns, when you're doing those things. And then just take notes and then try it next week. Try it out in Pugs, try it out Open Raid. Just constantly be looking for these little tiny improvements that you can make, and then over time, maybe you'll improve your damage there. Well, I say maybe. It's guaranteed that if you do these things, you will improve your damage. Critically thinking about the abilities that you have, how you use them, and when to use them will naturally lead you to making better decisions in a raid. For example, if I knew nothing about Sludge Fist and I came in and I saw, wait, this Marksman Hunter is using all of his cooldowns on the pillar, whereas I'm using them on the pull, which I'm not in this case, but for the sake of argument, let's say that I am. Then I could, by looking at these logs, see that he's getting so much more value by using his cooldowns on the pillar. So the next time I go in and I make that switch, and then I'm doing a lot more damage, because that's the best time to use them. Really, it's about finding good players that are out there and then stealing everything you can from them. This is, you will not go to jail for cheating.
That sounded wrong.
Yeah, you will not go to jail for cheating off of other good players' tests here. Look at what they're doing and then take it and use it for yourself. But yeah, that's what Warcraft Logs is. That's how you can go through and improve your damage. Hit me with all your questions and hopefully answered a lot of them. I'm sure I confused more than I helped, but
It's just a lot of information.
it is a lot of information. Absolutely.
Yeah, the one thing I got was that that everything that is done in raid is done in an encounter is logged, and that with a little work or maybe asking a few questions, I can figure out exactly where to go to find out that information.
That's right. There is one more thing I forgot to mention. This replay tab is very cool. And this will show you everything that happened in the raid from a position standpoint. So I can select my character. I can see where I'm facing, what my coordinates on the map are, where the boss is, who's the boss targeting, you know, still see what damage is being done, you know, so I see like live details on everything that happened during the raid. Those are the people marked with exsanguination, just ran out. This person's standing in a blood pool. Um, that's the last thing I think on this. This is really cool. I like going through this a lot, especially like I mean, everybody's been there where someone's like, I was there, I swear to God, and then we go and look at the replay, and they were extremely not there. They were across the room. But so yeah, everything is indeed logged, including your position at any given point.
I don't know. This feels a little Big Brother to me.
Yeah, definitely.
This explains some of those videos where they have the joke cartoons. I was like, how did they do all this animation?
Yep.
Ellie, I just wanted to say that I wasn't here for the entire presentation, but down to the end, I jumped back in, and the stuff that like I knew Warcraft logs can do this, but I was really engaged down the end there, and I appreciate the time that you took, to explain this kind of stuff. I'm definitely going to be looking at my character and see, to see what, more I can do. And I feel a little bit rejuvenated to play the game.
That's awesome. Love to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. This is going to be or has been recorded also. So I know this was a ton of information, but you should be able to go back and watch the VOD and reference if you need it. Also, obviously, I'm available. Hit me up in a DM if you have any questions, or I'm happy to go over anything else if anybody has any questions now.
Hey, Ellie,
Go ahead.
that tab is not showing up on mine.
Which tab?
The one that you were just in.
The replay?
Yeah.
So the replay tab only shows up. Let's see. Depends on. No, it should be there always.
Log out, maybe. Let's see if it's still there.
Let's see, even if I go to like all kills. Yeah, and it just says the replay is limited to single fights only. So like, let's look at this swipe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be there all the time, so yeah, maybe try relogging.
Well, like, whenever I try to...
Something I forgot to mention, to get your characters to show up here as well as your guilds and stuff, you do need to link Warcraft logs to your Battle.net account. But they're onboarding. Like you sign up for an account and then it asks you to link. You can sign in through Battle.net, and then when you do that, there will be a checkbox to share your profile with the site, and you'll want to do that in order to get these characters to show up there.
Oh, okay, good. I was wondering about that. I'm like, did I miss something?
Cool. Well, it has been about an hour and a half, so, or hour 45. So, anybody have any last minute questions? But if not, we can go ahead and wrap up.
I have plenty of questions, but not specifically about this.
Okay. Anything you want to knock out quick or offline?
No, I just mean in general, life type
Oh,
thing.
life questions.
No, I'm good. I'm good. If I run into anything, I'll let you know.
Cool.
I'm interested in your setup that you were showing at the beginning.
Which one?
How you have your bars and everything all set up in the middle there.
Oh, my UI. Why is that happening? Hold on. Yeah, let me launch the game again.
While he's doing that, thank you for coming, everybody. And if you will, please look in the general chat channel of the Discord. You will see a form there, a feedback form to fill out. Please fill it out so that we can give Ellie some feedback on his wonderful presentation, and also so we can get some feedback on what you guys want to see, what was good, what was not good, what you might be interested in teaching yourself. You might find yourself in the How to Win It WoW series. So just take a second and fill it out. Thank you.
And of course, everyone that attended, be sure to check to reach under your chair and grab the special prize that has been presented to everyone.
Yes, see if the prize is under your chair. Everybody check your chair. Is the prize there? Let's see who won.
Oh, it's only boogers.
I'm not in a chair, so I know there's nothing under here.
Alright, well, I guess that's it for the Warcraft logs stuff. I'll talk about UI here for a couple minutes.
Are you going to get this posted up on YouTube?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
It will probably go up in like an hour or so.
Okay.
You're gonna put a link to it in the Discord?
Yep.
Nope, he's gonna upload it to YouTube just for himself.
So can you tell I don't have WoW installed on an SSD?
Yes.
What? Why not?
I wasn't gonna say it.
Because I'm lazy.
Okay.
What do you mean lazy? How does it? What did you?
Alright, what's up, Morgan?
Yeah, how you have your UI here in the middle there. And I'm guessing you got it like what I was looking for, where you could see like I got a funny feeling in this middle bar is your what's his name? Because it's at 100.
My energy?
That's his resource.
Yeah, yeah, so this is just a weak aura pack. So on most class discords, they'll link to a couple weak aura packs, or like the class guides will have them as well. But if you go to wago.io, this is a site where people can upload custom weak auras for you to download. So like if I go for like rogue, I don't know, just rogue, I will get a bunch of different weak auras offered to me. The one that I'm using is this first one, Afinar's Rogue Pack. There's a lot of like full replacement weak auras, or like HUDs, like heads-up displays. Luxthos makes a lot of good ones for Afinar, and Luxthos make them for every class and spec. There's a couple other people that do them as well. I like Afinar's just because I like how he does the roll the bones buffs. Are there combat or target dummies here?
So is it just trial and error? I just keep putting them in until I find the one that I'm looking for?
Yeah, so that's what I did. I grabbed each of like the major packs and tried them out for a while. Deleted the ones I didn't like. I've also like gone through and edited the Afinar pack a little bit to line up better for me. Like Afinar doesn't include the Covenant ability or like my engineering nitro boosts in there. So like made some little tweaks and stuff. But it's just a way to track your cooldowns and your energy and resources and stuff.
Hey Ellie, there's no target dummies, but you should have the turnip punching bag.
Oh shit! Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so when you say download, can I download it directly into the weak auras, or
Yeah.
do I have to like copy and paste something?
Yeah, you copy and paste something. So like for this one, like you go in here. Usually they'll have some GIFs that show you what the packs look like, and then you can up here copy weak aura import string, and then it will copy it to your clipboard. Then you type /WA, and that brings up your weak auras. And then you can import, and then you Control V to paste that string that you copied from the website. And then it'll bring up this little window that will ask you to import the aura. I already have it, so it's going to import as an update, which I'm not going to do because I don't need to, but you would just import it as an update, or import the weak aura, and then it will show up like this. And then when you close it, it'll look how it looks by default.
You're a bit aggressive towards yourself there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if I approve of that, Weekora. That's a little cruel.
That's a Electro special.
All I could see is some kid asking you for help, and then that popping up on his screen. His mother's like, "What are you playing?"
But yeah, so yeah, I definitely recommend trying out all of them, and for like a dungeon or two, and like seeing the differences between them, see what your preferences are, and then you can just go in and then delete the ones you don't want. So delete children and group on the group. It's like this is a collection of like 150 weak auras or something. Who knows how many? So you don't want to delete them individually. You want to delete the entire group, children and group. You can import them all side by side. You don't want them to all run at the same time because obviously they're all serving the same function. So say I've got Aphanars in and I also have Luxthoses in. I go in to Aphanars, go to load, and select never. And then that pack won't be loaded. And then I can test Luxthoses, and then I would go back and then set Luxthoses to never load, come in, turn on Aphanars, and then I would be testing Aphanars. But yes, those are the weak aura packs. Some of them, a lot of them, probably most of them are like overkill. Like most people probably don't need to know everything all the time like this. You can get by with just a ability, like something that's tracking your major cooldowns and your major damaging abilities. Like I need to know when Blade Flurry is up, maybe, or when my Covenant ability is up. I just ran away from my punching bag. Where did it go? There it is. All right. So like, it can just let me know. So right now I know Slice and Dice is in the pandemic window. So that means I can safely refresh Slice and Dice.
Yeah, I really need to see how much of that priest stuff that I have to do those attacks. Like I really need to be able to watch that.
Yeah, it's definitely important. Like going back to the Warcraft log stuff, like using the cooldowns as soon as they're available. Obviously, I get really distracted raid leading, so it's not unlikely that I will miss a cooldown coming available. But if I don't have anything here telling me Adrenaline Rush will be up in 50 seconds, I might miss it entirely, even if I'm not raid leading. Because I'm not going to be looking at my bars. That like staring at your bars means I'm not looking at where my character is, and I'm getting hit by mechanics, right? So that's why I have bars on my screen, but I never look at them. And so that's why they're small and out of the way. I just have them there for like little keybinds and stuff that I need to make quickly. And all of my tracking of abilities is all right here next to my character, where I'm going to be looking most of the time. Same thing for like raid frames. As when you're healing or raid leading, I need my raid frames near the center of my screen, so I have them all right here.
Yeah, I have alerts on a lot of my stuff alerting me to when certain things are up.
Hmm.
But the thing is they're going so fast I could barely keep up with them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, what I find helps on that is minimizing the stuff you don't need.
Hmm.
I really don't need to know where my hearthstones are during combat.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, this one Sanguine Depths with a bunch of Ragnaros players the other day, it did come up.
I'm sorry.
But thank you very much, Ellie.
Yeah, no problem.
So, Ellie,
Hmm.
when you're an outlaw, do you still wait for the roll the bones thing for the slice and dice?
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, Especially when adrenaline rushes up, because the outlaw legendary is called Celerity, um, and that gives you a chance to gain adrenaline rush um, pretty regularly. And then also the best outlaw conduit is called Count the Odds, which gives your finishers a chance to give you a roll the bones buff. So it's very likely that I'll get the um, so like right now I don't have slice and dice up, and I also don't have the I didn't have the slice and dice buff from Roll the Bones, this attack one, but then I got it. You see, just by using a finisher, and it gave me slice and dice, right? So had I wasted my first 5 combo points on a slice and dice, and then I turn around 3 globals later and get granted slice and dice, that's a dispatch that I wasted. You know, like that 5 combo point slice and dice could have been a 5 combo point dispatch instead of wasting it on a slice and dice that I was just granted like 1 second later. You know, that's where those like minor optimizations throughout a fight really, really add up. You know, 1 extra global spent on a damage ability instead of maintaining a buff when that buff's going to be maintained for me automatically is a damage increase.
Oh, okay.
Alright, guys, well, I'm gonna go ahead and take off. For those officers that are here, I will see you guys tomorrow. Everyone else, I will see you on Tuesday.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, last call for questions, and then I think I'm gonna head out as well. All right, cool. Well, thanks y'all for coming, and go ahead, Eda.
Don't forget to
Thank
fill out
you,
the
sir.
form.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm filling out the form now.
I think you're going to become the guild commercial person.
I already am. What do you need to become?
All right.
Thanks, Al.
Yeah, thanks y'all. Have a good